Welcome to the Wealth Defenders with Terry Cox. It's the show about financial freedom, getting you that lifetime income so you can have the retirement you always dreamed about. Consumer advocate Bruce Rosenblum here with you as well in the studio with Terry Cox. Terry, great to be back with you again.
Good to see you, Bruce. How's everything?
Just trying to do my best, trying to keep my head above water, doing a decent job of it this year, I think, firing all cylinders.
Well, good deal. Hey, man, did you survive that snowstorm?
Indeed, I did. Thank you for asking about that. Of course, I'm actually not in Arizona. I'm in North Carolina. Terry's in Arizona. But yes, we did have a snowstorm. Last time we were scheduled to do this podcast, I had to peace out, and it did dump on us. It dumped on us, and it was great. I went home and I played in the snow a little bit. I had to do that and enjoy myself. But yeah, it was nice. But you guys, when's the last time you guys got snow?
So here in the valley, well, I was going to say here in the valley, we don't get snow, but it was probably 7 or 8 years ago. It actually snowed I'm in a town called Fountain Hills, and we actually got snow. And it was kind of funny because our dogs at the time had never seen snow. So when the morning we got up, we went to let them out, they wouldn't even walk out the door. They were like, what is happening right now?
It's so funny to see dogs that have never seen snow. It's like some kind of alien thing to them. They don't know how to react to it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, they freaked out. So we had a tree in our front yard, and the way the snow came down, there was an area that didn't have any snow under the tree. So I actually had to pick the dogs up, take them over there so that they could, because they weren't walking in the snow. It was quite entertaining.
They were not feeling it at all.
Not at all.
Oh. But that's good. They knew something was off in their environment. And I feel like so many people out there, sometimes they'll be in a situation where they feel like something is off, but because of pleasantries or being PC, they'll let it slide. And this is how people get scammed. And I know you and I talked before the program started. Let's talk about scams today. And I think this is the perfect entree into our conversation here about these scams because, man, oh man, it seems like these things, they're ramping up, and I keep hearing about people getting taken advantage of.
Yeah. Oh, it's crazy. We've been seeing this a lot over the last few years. And before we get into that, I'll just say this. So guys like me, financial advisors,
yes,
we have continuing education that we have to do year after year. Okay. And a large part of that is focused on scams, elder abuse, and things of that nature, phishing. So the phishing scam was actually the first thing that at least in my office, that we came across. I got an email one day from a guy that I knew who was not a client, and but he ran a business in town. So I got an email from him allegedly that he was in another country. An emergency had happened, and he sent me an account number and wanted to know if I could send him. It was like $5,000 or $6,000, and he was going to pay me back when he got back. And first of all, I was thinking, well, I'm not sure that's our relationship, but I had just seen him a few days earlier, and he hadn't mentioned a vacation or anything. So I called him, and he answered the phone, and the whole thing was a scam. But yeah, we have to be aware of things like that because we're kind of the first line of defense for our clients. Know your customer, know their habits. Another quick example of that, I got an email from an actual client that told me that he had a large tax bill coming due, and this was a few years ago, and that he needed me to send him, it was a large amount of money to cover this tax bill. Well, ironically enough, that same client was coming in to see me that day.
Okay.
So I didn't even respond to the email. I waited for him to come in. Yeah. And we sat down. I said, so you have a big tax bill that you need to cover this year? And he just gave me this blank look like, what are you talking about? So not only do they attempt that on the individual clients, they also try to affect me with phishing scams like that as well.
Wow. So you had two scammers reach out to you, spoofing the names of your clients and trying to get you into some kind of a transaction there.
Yes.
Wow. And it makes me wonder how they can do this stuff. How do they get the names of your clients? Because it happens to so many other professionals too. Somehow these scammers, they get email addresses and they can spoof these contacts.
And some of them look very real and very legitimate, and that's one of the big reasons that we cannot take trade instructions, via an email or a voicemail or a text message. Sometimes, it's inconvenient for the clients that we can't do that, but we have to actually have a conversation and verify that client is requesting that transaction.
Okay, so there are layers of protection here to make sure that even if the scam does breach the perimeter, it's not going to get to the castle itself.
Yes. And sometimes when these scammers reach out to the clients, I don't know what kind of language that the scammers use, but I'm to the point where I believe that they kind of hypnotize clients a little bit because these people would not normally do some of the things that they do. And one of the big things is if you're on your computer and all of a sudden you get the little thing that flashes on your computer screen that says that you've been hacked and you need to call the number on the screen.
Yes.
Don't call the number on the screen.
Right.
Yeah, if that happens, just shut off the computer and call the customer service number that you're familiar with. Because we've had several people that actually called that number, and we didn't know it at the time. We found out a little downstream a little bit.
Right.
But so one client who was a travel agent got this screen that popped up. They called the number, and they went through a series of transfers on the telephone. You've been hacked. Let me have you talk to somebody else. Long story short, this client ended up handing off $50,000 in cash to somebody that they didn't know in a grocery store parking lot.
$50,000.
So they had told this client that her Social Security number had been stolen.
Right.
And and they had to issue her a new one. And it was kind of this elaborate story that they had going on. And the client met somebody that she didn't know and handed off cash, and so we found out shortly after that what was happening, and so we intervened and kind of coached her through the rest of the situation, so we put a stop to it. But yeah, it's really crazy, and the stories are very, very elaborate.
This reminds me of a story that I read a little while ago. This gentleman put his wife's story on the internet to get some public opinion and feedback on it. He said his wife was a PhD holder, lawyer, and a scammer got in touch with her and made her believe that because of the way she litigated a case, she was liable to lose her law license, and she would also have to go to jail possibly, and there was a fine involved if she didn't want further police action. And this person bought it. She bought it, and unfortunately ended up giving the man $25,000. So it just goes to show, it doesn't matter how educated you are. It doesn't matter what stage of life you are in. You are susceptible to these tactics and these nefarious people trying to get money out of you. And it's tragic because I think a lot of us, we're conditioned to just go with the flow and follow instructions. But you have to know when you shouldn't be doing that, when you shouldn't really go with the flow or follow instructions.
Absolutely. And the biggest thing that we've seen is when these scammers get people on the phone, they tell them not to tell anybody. Because if anybody's listening, if anybody ever tells you not to tell somebody, you need to tell somebody. Yes, absolutely. Because the scare tactics and the fear that gets instilled people just panic, and they think. I had someone that thought that they were going to jail. That story was pretty elaborate. Client got a call that his Social Security number had been connected. I forget the whole story, but it had been connected to a home in another state where like some nefarious drug deal had gone down.
Yeah.
And they were coming after him. And he was like, well, what am I supposed to? And when he first called me, it was kind of strange, a very weird story that was told to me. And I thought about it over the weekend. And Monday I called him and I said, hey, I'm going to press you a little bit.
Okay.
and kind of gave him a heads up of what I was going to do. And he didn't want to tell me in the beginning. And pretty soon, he finally broke and told me what was going on. Well, and the reason I want to tell some of these stories is because there's some consistencies of what these scammers do. Number one is they tell you not to tell anybody. Number two, they have you loading up prepaid debit cards.
That's it.
And meeting up somebody and handing things off. Feeding money into cryptocurrency machines.
That's a big one. Yes.
That's a big one. Absolutely. So let those things that you're told be a red flag, and maybe stop and pause and want to ask somebody some questions. Another big one is it's kind of like a publisher's clearinghouse type of thing, where hey, you've won a vehicle and a large sum of money, and to collect this you just need to pay some taxes up front.
Yep.
Yeah.
The clearinghouse one reminds me of a situation I actually was told about. I do an improv group every other Sunday. It's a great little thing to keep my mind somewhat sharp as a radio and TV guy. But one of the members of my group, she mentioned that she was selling some stuff on Craigslist, and a buyer contacted her and said, I want to buy this. Let me send you a check. And the check was sent. But of course, the buyer said, oh my God, I'm sorry. I overpaid by $2,000. Can you send the stuff back to me? And of course, that was a total scam. But she fell for it. She fell for it because she was a nice person, a good, genuine person, thinking that other person was also good and genuine. But in this day and age, I hate to say it, but you have to be a bit skeptical of people. You got to be a bit skeptical of people's intentions. And
Absolutely.
like you said, just know that there are bad actors out there.
Yeah. And if anything happens and you don't know who to contact, I tell our clients, call me, if you want to talk through something, but notify the authorities, because that's what they're there for. And they can help you with that as well. That's
it. Your authorities, the bank, talk to your bank. That's how the Tinder swindler got busted. I don't know if people out there have seen the Tinder swindler, about this guy. He was on the dating apps and he was making women believe he would get them hooked first. He would make them get interested, and then he would make it seem like he was in trouble and they should send him money to bail him out. And at that point, they were so invested in this guy that they decided to do it. So he was making money off these women hand over fist. But eventually one of the women said, let me talk to my bank. And she went to the bank, and the bank said, actually, yes, we are investigating this guy. Let's bring you into the mix. And thankfully, they finally got him. But yes, to your point, tell people about what's happening. Tell people so you can not be isolated here.
Yeah, and another big one, at least around Arizona, is where people will get a phone call, says, hey, your grandson, your granddaughter's in Mexico. They've been arrested. You need to send some cash. And they don't even think anything about it. They just panic and they're going to get my grandson out of jail. And they wire money and it's gone.
You're right. And I feel like that's one of the scams that I would probably fall for if I was a bit older. If I was, say, in my 70s and somebody calls me saying, hey, your grandson or granddaughter's in prison, send bail money. At that point, depending on your relationship with your kids, that might be a concern you might have. So
absolutely.
I think it's easy to think of your loved ones and fall for that kind of stuff. It's tragic. But I know you have so many controls in place at TDC Financial to prevent this kind of thing. And that's why I love talking about TDC Financial, because you guys, it's all about security here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There was an instance, I had been out of the office on vacation, and I came back on Monday morning, and we have clients that are, do you know what snowbirds are?
People who vacation, right? It's they vacation in the warmer areas and then come back to the colder areas. Is that, am I on the money?
Yeah, you're on the money. So we had a client, we had several of them that are snowbirds.
Okay.
One lived in the Midwest and would come back, every fall, but would always request money to take care of incidentals on the properties back in the Midwest.
Right.
So this had been going on for years. So we knew the story. There was nothing going on. Well, I get to the office Monday morning, and I was there by myself at the time. Client calls and says, "Hey, I need X number of dollars." Nothing unusual for me, so I sent it to her. And an hour or so later, when we were having our meeting, our office meeting, I let my assistant know that I had gone ahead and sent the money to the client. And my assistant said to me, "I sent that money last week." I'm like, "Wait, what are you talking about?" So the client had called, requested, it was a pretty large sum of money from my assistant, and then waited till when she knew that I was in the office by myself and requested the same amount. So now we're trying to talk through this. Like, what does that mean? I mean, so I was trying to reach the client, couldn't reach the client. Thankfully, the bank on the receiving end, when they got the second amount of money to come in, they flagged it as fraud and sent the money back to us. Thank God, right? So
Thank God. Yes.
So that was one of our stories that went on for a few months. That story got a little crazy, but that was a client that came across one of these publishing clearinghouses types of scams. And we then found out that not only had the client sent the first amount of money, the full intent was to send the second amount of money to these people. And then we found out that this had been going on for like months, where she had been meeting up with these people, handing off debit cards, kind of the stuff that we talked about earlier, and fully believed it, and got upset with me that I had put a stop to this.
Yes.
And I had ruined everything for her. So that was kind of a tough situation and we never really fully got through to her on that. So, but yeah, sometimes depending on your state of mind and the stories that you're told, who knows how that ends up.
Absolutely. And this is the story that we're going to jump into next week on the Wealth Defenders, because there's too much out there on scams for us to not talk about this on the next show. So with that in mind, Terry, I think we should break right here and then circle back around for more scams next week. What do you say?
That sounds like a plan to me, my friend.
Fantastic. Well, stay tuned for the next part of this conversation. We will talk more about this and also talk about always getting your money on track here on the Wealth Defenders. Number is on the screen for no cost, no obligation financial reviews. Also, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube and everything else, because this is your one-stop shop for world-class financial advice from Terry Cox, who's been in the business for a very long time. He's going to get you straight. He's going to get us all straight, because we need this to avoid scams. And with that in mind, we'll call it right here. See you next week on the Wealth Defenders.